This episode is brought to you by creativity. Feeling a bit down in the dumps? Lacking that creative spark? Here at Pazuzu Limited, we understand how hard it is to get those creative juices flowing. We grind down the very finest creative minds into a fine powder, mix that with artisanal water to bring out our latest creation, creativity. One swig of our refreshing tea tonic, and you'll be constructing sonnets like the bard himself. Creativity takes no responsibility for mood swings, sudden obsession with certain styles of art, or crippling debt. Our artisanal water is sourced from the finest artists. Creativity is a subsidiary of Pazuzu Limited. Most of our life is lived in structure. In schools, we are taught to focus, to be in the present. The more education we do, the more we tend to be forced into a type of life that is fitted into a box. It is rigid. Turn up at this time and do this task. Most jobs do not require activity, and instead, we need to complete one task after another. In the end, we lose that childlike wonder that we used to see the world through. But if you're listening to this, then you know not is all lost, because as adults, we are in the unique position to choose what we spend our time doing. A lot of us choose hobbies as creative outlets: role-playing, painting, miniatures, knitting, sewing, crafting. We're drawn to many different creative things. If you ever wonder why it is that humans have such a tremendous control over the world, it's not luck. We don't have many biological advantages, but what we do have is our creativity. We can picture things that don't exist, imagine worlds that could be, and choosing to live a life where you live creatively is one where you make a constant decision to question and rethink the things around you. But that's a lot easier said than done. I'm going to run through a few learnings from my life, as well as those I've picked up along the way from other people over the years. These do not just apply to traditional creative tasks like writing and art, they also apply to any creative problem solution, a new process at work, or a creative way to solve a problem you're dealing with. Whatever it is, a lot of the process is the same. Rule 1. Kill your darlings. In literature, to kill your darlings is to remove parts of your story that you love. It could be a phrase, sometimes a character or story arc. We can get attached to things we create, when, with a critical eye, we know we should remove it and move on. As a game master, this often happens with storylines and quests. You think you have a real winner, but then the players just bounce off it, or don't like it. So remember to kill your darlings. Common roleplay horror stories often involve GMs trying to force a certain storyline for players to follow. They want them to take a certain course of action. There's something specific that the GM wants to tell, a certain story beat they want to hit. The players, though, don't want to, or they work out some way around the problem. The GM should run with it, kill their darling idea, and create a new one. You must let go, you must move on. This applies to more than just story points as well. It could apply to whole campaigns. Sometimes they just don't work. It's not your fault, move on. Now, let's talk about how you can be more creative in finding solutions for your problems. So rule 2 is remember to define your problem. When trying to find a solution for a problem, the first step is always to state the problem and be as clear as possible. If your goal is too broad or it's not well defined, your solution will be the same. You might think that your problem is your campaign's not fun enough, but that's pretty broad. So let's make it more specific. Is the problem that your players are not enjoying the storyline, or the specific parts of the campaign are not engaging? Maybe their playstyles are different, or they're finding combat boring. These are problems that we can solve. As I said before, this applies to all sorts of problems. But for our example, let's stick with the Game Master one. For me, I need an interesting challenge from my players. I have a group that are about to cross a region called the Dread Marshes, home to a necromancer. They're crossing in order to get to the Glass Spires to fight an ancient blue dragon. So I wanted to find my problem and what I want to achieve. I want a challenge from my players with tones of tense survival horror in the Dread Marshes that foreshadows the necromancer. Depending on how the players respond to the challenge, it could lead them to draining their resources, giving them rewards, creating new connections, or new information. So make sure you define your problem. This is actually a skill in itself. Being able to find a problem is the most important step in allowing you to fix it. Otherwise, you're just throwing mud at a wall and hoping something sticks. Once you've defined a problem, you can then move on to come up with solutions. This brings me to rule 3. Diverge and then converge. The process of creating solutions and coming up with new ideas involves 2 steps. The first is diverging, and then you converge. Or, to put it another way, you come up with many ideas of possible, changing and shifting and branching out, and then you go through a process of culling them down, removing the ideas that don't work. Let's be honest, most ideas kind of suck. You need to critically assess them against your problem statement, removing one or more until you converge your idea into the path you're going to take. So my problem statement was a challenge for the players, 10 survival horror in the Dread Marshes. Depending on the players, it could lead to drain their resources, granting them rewards, new connections, or information. So now let's do some diverging. Normally, this would take quite a bit of time. I'll jot down my ideas on Excel, maybe on paper, or OneNote. For now, I'm just going to throw out some ideas. When you do brainstorming, it's important not to limit yourself. Don't assess the ideas in terms of how they meet your problem statement until you start to converge. Diverging, you just want to get as many as possible. This also helps get out some of the bad ideas first. You put them up on the board, or you write them down, and then you move on to the next ones. So as a bit of a starting point, let's quickly talk about the Dread Marshes. The more information you can have with your problem, the better. So they have a necromancer at the center. It's a large swamp with undead walking around. It's slimy, and it's set in a traditional D&D fantasy world, with all sorts of traditional D&D creatures around. There is an ancient blue dragon that has appeared to the east, so potentially predators from the mountains might have walked down and pushed into the swamp territory as well. Okay, let's throw out some ideas. In no particular order, just from first to last, I came up with Undead Swamp Hydra, Lost Merchant, Ghost Lights, Cursed Merchant, A Sinking Village, Cursed Ferry with Skeletal Ferryman, Odd Merchants, such as a hag that trades memories instead of gold, or a frog merchant, Giant Leeches, Approach by a representative of the Necromancer, Giant Lily-trotter birds eating giant leeches, another group of adventurers, Ancient Preserved Warriors rising from the dead, Giant Frogs asking for help, a mysterious building, a rusted machine emerging from the swamp, a bridge with a toll across, and a large rotting dragon corpse. So now that I've done my first diverge, coming up with a whole bunch of ideas, I'm now going to go through them and look at the ones that speak to me. Which ones can I work on a bit more? The ones that jumped out to me were the mysterious building, a sinking village, a large rotting dragon corpse, and a rusted machine emerging from the swamp. From there, I can spend time fleshing each of these out. Again, diverging, creating different ideas. What could the mysterious building be? Is it a cache for the necromancer? Perhaps it's something that spreads their influence. For the rotting dragon corpse, is the necromancer planning on raising it as a zombie dragon, potentially to fight the blue dragon? The machine emerging from the swamp, is it some sort of transport the players could dig out and recover? An airship or some sort of giant mechanical construct? So, what I've done is converge from 19 ideas down to 4, and then diverge those 4 to get a few more. The process then continues. Converge again, removing the ones that I don't like, and adding more detail until I come up with a few separate encounters. This wave motion allows me to come up with many ideas until I settle on my final outcome. Now, I've made this process sound kinda easy, but rule 4, you can't lead a horse to water. As I mentioned earlier, being creative can be hard. It uses mental energy, and while you can set up all the right things, prepare your space, put on the right music, and sit down with a clear goal and a defined problem, and still nothing kinda comes. This is frustrating, but in the end it's normal. Because creativity uses mental energy, it's prone to be affected by how tired you are, how stressed, your mood, even your frame of mind. As the adage goes, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. There are things you can control, things you can influence, and then things outside of both. Sometimes this is called writer's block. This is a problem that has struck people throughout history. Sometimes it's short-lived, and sometimes it takes months to resolve. There are many methods to help manage this block, and when I used to do a lot of creative writing, I was an advocate for trying to write through it. Basically, you just start writing, and regardless of how bad it is, you just keep going until you get into the flow. Then you go back and rewrite or straight up delete the stuff that you don't like. There are lots of other ways. I also listen to a lot of D&D lore videos to get my brain turning. The videos I make on world building are also designed to help people think of new ideas for their writing. Brainstorming, as I described before in the Diverge and Converge section, is also a useful tool. You throw out a whole bunch of different ideas, and maybe your first 15 might be trash, but then the 16th is gold. Sometimes, that's just how it goes. You need to find out what works for you. Maybe going for a walk, drawing something, perhaps badly, listening to podcasts, writing nonsense, organizing your notes, or reading. Try different things, and be as patient as possible with yourself. And that brings me to rule 5. Be kind to yourself. The high of producing something you're proud of can be shattered instantly, or it can be replaced with the next attempt ending in failure. You may end up hitting your head against the wall for days, or even weeks trying to come up with something. You may come up with what you think is a great idea, only for it to fail on contact with other people. This, unfortunately, is quite normal. You are not alone. Be kind to yourself, and importantly, don't blame yourself. I often remind myself that as consumers of content, we rarely see the failures of the creators we love. How many drafts and rewrites of my videos do you think I make before posting one? How many times do I stumble over my words and have to rewrite it? How many scripts have I thrown out because I didn't like how they were going? For you, all you see is the end result. But in reality, even shorts can take a long time to make. The perfect lighting, the perfect movements, and of course, to make it look effortless. We can be forgiven in thinking they succeed on their first time, when in reality, they probably failed many times first. The anxiety and pressure you put on yourself can lead to do more harm than good. So be kind to yourself. Failing is not your fault. It's part of life. It's how we grow and learn. One of the reasons I sign off with have fun is because fun is one of the ways we can deal with failure. We can have fun while doing it. If your players laugh along with you when a storyline crumbles to dust, then it won't feel so bad. If there is an awkward silence, or worse, they criticize you, then you won't want to try again. Often, creativity returns when you stop trying to force it. And to simply give yourself space to breathe, your brain is able to work in the background, still connecting ideas, still building something beneath the surface. You just can't see it yet. And that brings me to rule 6. Inspiration strikes at random times. In the shower, on the toilet, or when drifting off to sleep, or even on your way to work, inspiration rarely arrives when you sit down and demand it. You can block out some time, open a document, and just nothing. Then later, you're doing something else and suddenly an idea hits you. This is because your subconscious is ticking away on your problems. It's the same reason why you suddenly remember a word a few hours ago you were being frustrated about not being able to recall. Your brain was working in the background, and then it just pops out. So make sure you record those flashes when they happen. Keep something handy to write them down, like a notes app on your phone, or keep some pen and paper nearby. However you do it, respect those small sparks when they arrive and record them. Do not assume you will remember them. I wrote a one-shot fairly recently about a fishing village caught in a storm. The townsfolk were trapped inside because the rain burned their skin. The players turn up and have to unravel the mystery of what's going on. The idea came to me while I was drifting off to sleep, and I managed to pull out my phone and write down Rain Village idea in my notes app. A few days later, I was typing it up as a one-shot, adding in some lore-friendly fungus demonic magics and connecting the pieces to create the right atmosphere. If I hadn't jotted it down, the idea would have been gone in the morning. So write it down, and then importantly, go back and review it. Look to see what ideas you've jotted down that you can use. Maybe it's a cool character idea, an interesting NPC, or a plot hook. Record it, and you might just have your next big idea. So in this video, we'll run through 6 rules to help you be more creative. Rule 1. Kill your darlings. Don't be afraid to stop working on something if it's not going well, or if it's not meeting your needs. Rule 2. Define your problem. Focus on what it is you're trying to achieve and define it really well so that you know when an idea will or won't actually fix your problem. Rule 3. Diverge and then converge. Brainstorm, coming up with many different ideas, spreading out, and then bring them back in by assessing them against your problem. Repeat that over and over again, ensuring your ideas become more and more targeted towards the problem you're trying to fix. Rule 4. You can lead a horse to water, but sometimes you're not going to be able to force yourself to be creative. So just accept it and work on ways to help yourself, but try not to blame yourself too much. Rule 5. Be kind to yourself. Accept that sometimes things aren't going to work out as you want. You're not perfect. Indeed, no one is. Just try your best. And if something doesn't work, try it slightly different ways. Keep trying things until you find the things that work for yourself. Rule 6. Inspiration strikes at random times. Make sure you have a way to jot down those crazy, good ideas that just randomly pop into your head, and then set aside time to go back and go through them, checking to see what might be useful or what you could use for the next chapter of whatever it is you're preparing. So, living a creative life can be tough, but it's also incredibly rewarding. The wonder of making something, seeing it bloom and blossom from an idea into something that works is just fantastic. That's why we're here, to make things, to imagine new ideas and new ways of doing things. So thank you for listening to this episode of GMspiration, and always remember to have fun.